Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at RIEC LLC or RIEC LLC, a small business consultation agency operating within the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. Before we get into today's lesson content and material, which is break-even analysis, we'd like to take a moment to give special thanks and acknowledgement to the following entities. 1. The customer base we've received within the last 60 days. It's been an honor to learn, grow, and develop from your organization and our own. 2nd, acknowledgement to Mr. Tremelin of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a social entrepreneur who has provided logistical support to those affected by Hurricane Dorian within the Bahamas. Thank you for reaching out to our organization and allowing us to contribute in your efforts. We will continue to do so as long as you continue the cause. 3, special thanks to Dr. Horn of American Military University. Thank you for providing the recommendation letter on my behalf. It's in hopes that someday I operate in the same academic capacity as you. Transitioning, today's lesson content and material is breaking even analysis. And before we get into why this applies to you, we'll discuss key terms necessary to grasp the concepts contained therein. The first term is fixed costs. Fixed costs is best described as costs that do not change. Examples of fixed costs are rent or insurance. Revenue is the gross income variable that an organization produces or individual, depending on which situation it applies to. Variable costs are the costs that do have the potential to change. An example, labor and raw materials are variable costs. Finally, the contribution margin will play heavily into the sales dollars aspect of today's lesson. The contribution margin is achieved by taking the variable costs and subtracting the sales price from said costs. Now, who does this apply to? It applies to small business owners, entrepreneurs, and rental landlords alike. What is it? It identifies the bare minimum required to meet operational expenses and continue to survive. When is this applied? It's applied during the initial phases of planning and development for a business or movement. It can be done periodically in order to determine if any changes are necessary. Where is this done? As previously stated, it's most often seen in small business communities and project development. Why? You do a break-even analysis in order to identify the bare minimum required to cover expenses and continue operations. If you do not do this, it's the equivalent of testing the depth of both waters. Testing the depth of the waters with both feet. You can do it. It's not recommended. Transitioning. Now that we've covered key terminology and who this applies to, we can now transfer over to the somewhat more technical aspect on how to achieve our variables. There's 2 different methods to achieve these variables. One is the units method, and the other is the sale dollars method. And in order to identify how many units are required for your organization to sell and break even, you must take the fixed costs and divide it by the revenue minus variable costs. Your product will give you your units break-even point. For sales dollars, you simply take the fixed costs and you divide by the contribution margin, which, as previously stated, is variable costs minus sales price. Once you have both of your variables, you can now cross-reference and compare in order to determine if you are correct in your calculations. And if you are, and your units, the number of units you are required to sell to break even, matches the sales dollar amount required to break even, then you know you are right. So what can you do with this? Once you've identified these values, you can determine where your shortcomings lie. If you need to reduce costs in labor, reduce costs in variables, switch venues, and operate out of a new location, hence maybe it's your fixed costs that are messed up. Maybe you need to adjust your rent value. Maybe it's your insurance. Maybe your insurance is too high. The break-even analysis allows you to look at from a different perspective and multiple variations where your output is lagging and how to best fix your variables to create the profit margin you are looking for. With that being said, thank you for your time. If you have any further questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to comment in the comment boxes beneath this video or reach out to ourselves at riec2019@aol.com or 360-731-0729. Also, a special note before we head out for today, for those of you small business owners or project lead and developers that would like to advertise your skill sets, abilities, or ventures, please feel free to reach out to ourselves. We will set up an interview and publish it in order for your organization to be recognized and your business philosophies to be broadcasted to those who are willing to listen. Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining RIEC LLC in today's lesson content.